There's a lot to talk about with everything going on with DC, and I want to start out by saying that I strive to not be a hypocrite, and I strive to not be super overly negative all the time about things. I do certainly get annoyed, and right now, I've been in a spot with DC for a while where I'm just annoyed, I guess, and this news doesn't make that any better. So I wanted to kind of recap everything going on. I don't need this to be an echo chamber. If you guys have different opinions on everything going on, that's fine. And at the end of the day, you know what I really want? The movies, the shows, the comics, and the games to be good. And maybe some of them will not be for me. If they are still good, though, even if they're not for me, I'm fine with that, okay? That's what I want at the end of the day. And I do want to start by saying I think DC has felt directionless for a long time. However, there's a few reasons I'm annoyed at even the current announcement that I will get into. So before we hop into it, if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe. We talk about DC here, talk about all kinds of stuff, Fallout, Assassin's Creed, starting to talk about 007. So the sky's kind of the limits on this channel, but when it comes down to it, the news essentially that I want to tackle today is from James Gunn himself, and it is that Henry Cavill will not be back as Superman. Now, I don't think that this is as simple as just, well, I liked Henry Cavill, so that frustrates me, or I disliked Henry Cavill, so thank God I didn't like Man of Steel. Personally, I don't think that this situation is that black and white. I'm going to explain why and tell you kind of where I'm at. It comes down to James Gunn tweeting 6 hours ago when I record this, so this was on the 14th. I'm recording it on the 15th because I have the world's weirdest sleep schedule, and he was talking about how him and Peter, who are, kind of running the DC slate right now, have a DC slate ready to go, which we couldn't be more over the moon about. We'll be able to share some exciting information about our first projects at the beginning of the new year. Among those on the slate is Superman. In the initial stages, our story will be focusing on an earlier part of Superman's life, so the character will not be played by Henry Cavill. He went on to clarify, but we just had a great meeting with Henry, and we're big fans, and we talked about a number of exciting possibilities to work together in the future. He went on to answer a tweet. I don't know if this person blocked me or if they just have a private Twitter or if they went private. I can't really see what they say. But he answered some other ones and said that he will be writing some of these projects, but they don't know who the director will be yet. It's not a Superman origin story. And also they met with Ben Affleck yesterday precisely because he wants to direct and we want him to direct. We just have to find the right project. So there is going to be a lot more going on, but the frustrating thing to me kind of comes down to how it's been treated, how DC has been treated for a long time, because let's take a look at what Henry Cavill said about this. I think he answered it with a lot of grace and goodness. He said, I have just had a meeting with James Gunn and Peter Safran, and it is sad news, everyone. I will, after all, not be returning as Superman. After being told by the studio to announce my return back in October prior to their hire, this news isn't the easiest, but that's life. The changing of the guard is something that happens. I respect that. James and Peter have a universe to build. I wish them and all involved with the new universe the best of luck and the happiest of fortunes. For those who have been by my side through the years, we can mourn for a bit, but then we must remember Superman is still around. Everything he stands for still exists, and the examples he sets for us are still there. My turn to wear the cape has passed, but what Superman stands for never will. It's been a fun ride with you all, onwards and upwards. Now, one of the things that frustrates me the most about what's going on right now is that there were some very interesting potential projects going on, including the Batman Beyond movie that got kind of semi-leaked and other stuff that was, I guess, happening. And it seemed like the wheels were turning, at least in the direction of kind of bringing back Ben Affleck, bringing back Henry Cavill, and trying to correct course with those characters in terms of portray them to be more comic booky. It seemed that Superman was going more the truth, justice, and hope, and, all those ways. And it seemed like Batman had regained his faith in humanity after, obviously, the Snyder Cut, and they were kind of going in that direction with him, kind of going into the Flash. But my big problem with DC has been consistency, and I don't think that this changes any of that. Now, does it have the potential to do so in terms of later on? Yes, it does have the potential to become quality and the potential to become good repeated over time, right? To set a precedent of what DC can be. Because let's be honest, as much as I like the DCEU, there have been problems ever since the beginning. It's done things I don't like. It's done things I do like. I give it props for being experimental and willing to go out of its way to change and do different things when something didn't work. But there have been a lot of projects that have been just fairly okay as well. It's especially in recent years. I think that when it comes down to it, you know, movies like BVS and the Snyder Cut and all these other movies, they certainly have their fans and they certainly have their detractors. There's things I love about them and things that I don't connect with at all about them. I would say I'm neither the hardest core fan nor a hater. I ended up really liking the Snyder Cut a lot. I actually enjoy the BVS Ultimate Cut. It has problems, I think, but I really enjoy it. I like it as a movie. And I thought Man of Steel was a great place to start in kind of establishing Superman, but the studio ignored a lot of their talent for a lot of years, and the situation we're in is both a mixture of not righting the ship and instead docking it and taking a new one, essentially, just rebooting, and also, of course, the old guard, the old studio heads, waiting so damn long to actually get anything going and not knowing where they want to take anything. It's a double-edged sword here in terms of what's going on. Now, why am I frustrated about this? Because, look, I will be completely upfront with you. I have before said that the DCEU could probably use a reboot. So what right do I have to be upset about this? What bothers me about this? I want to tell you right now, it's one, a history of DC with me and how I feel treated as a fan or consumer of the products, how I feel like my opinion constantly doesn't matter at all in terms of the publications for the comics, the animation, or the movies or games, but also how I feel like your opinion doesn't matter at all, because I think a lot of us share opinions on this channel, and I've seen some of your guys' comments will get thousands of likes. People agree with you, okay? Some of my videos will get 100,000 views. It doesn't happen often, but it happens where people watch and they're like, you know what? This isn't total garbage. This is a great take. I like this. Or, oh, I don't really like this take. I'm going to respond to it. And then a bunch of people agree with that. Maybe agree with that person over me. That's good. That's called getting feedback and actually directing your products to match what consumers want along with what will make the best product. I don't think DC has done that in a long time. I think that they have completely ignored a lot of their great continuities. To just run through some of the examples, I know I have a hard time letting go of the past. The Timverse, the DCAU with Paul Dini and Bruce Timm. There's so much more content there that could be made and could be high quality. And when people say, no, there's not, then why are the comics flying off the shelves? At least in my area and in a lot of the areas around me, and I do live in the Twin Cities, so there are a lot of people here. It's in Minnesota. Not the biggest place ever, but there are a lot of people here. The DCAU comics constantly are sold out. They're just gone at every comic store. There will be maybe a back issue or two that kind of pops up here and there and ends up in a drawer. That's it. Out of like half a dozen comic shops, they sell out. People buy them. And if you look at the numbers online, they sell relatively well there too. So people are getting those. People are buying them digital. People are constantly consuming, Batman The Adventures Continue or Justice League Infinity. They want more of that content, but DC refuses to give it to them, basically arguing they didn't have any more ideas for it, and then going on to publish a bunch of comics. Let's look at the DCAMU, the animated movie universe that started with, I believe, the Flashpoint Paradox, then went Justice League War, and went on all the way to Dark Apocalypse War, right? Let's look at that. That whole universe is up and down, all over the place in terms of quality, and all over the place in terms of reported sales. There is certainly a reason they moved away from it to the Tomorrowverse, which on its own is fine, but also has a lot of problems and a lot of ups and downs with things like Green Lantern, Beware My Power. You finally give Green Lantern a movie after years, and you just make it not very good, So I think that their animation, they've ignored some of the most heartfelt universes they have, and others that they could have built up to be equal to or even better than that, they kind of buried or left to rot in mediocrity, or just sort of release a thing here and there and just say, oh, well, whatever, it's fine. And I don't really agree with that. It doesn't feel like there's that respect and special care put into the movies that there used to be. It's not just nostalgia. You watch a modern DC animated movie versus you go back and watch Mask of the Phantasm or Batman Mr. Freeze Sub-Zero. There is a difference in quality. It doesn't mean none of them will match up, none of them will be as good. I'm just saying on average, they're not really hitting those heights in a lot of their animation stuff anymore. With the comics, a lot of the relationships and things I've cared about are so all over the place that I just don't even bother to read as many comic books anymore. I just don't bother because I know that it's going to over-rely on events. It's going to over-rely on crossovers, and inevitably nothing will have an impact anyways. It'll all get rebooted or moved around in the timeline, especially with DC. Marvel has a similar problem with their comics, but at least it feels like certain things can stick for a while. With DC, it feels like nothing really can. And that even comes down to relationships. They're kind of retconning and changing a lot of stuff to modernize it, and that's fine to create modern characters. I have no problem with that, but I want you to actually create the modern characters. There's a reason a character like Miles Morales works so well in Marvel. It's because he was created to be a modern character. He was created to be new. He was created to kind of handle that Spider-Man mantle, that responsibility, and be something built from the ground up, right? I don't really see that with DC Comics nearly as much. They don't really introduce a lot of new, interesting ideas to me, at least in the last few years of reading them. I think Batman comics have been, in particular, all over the place for quality ever since the beginning of Batman Rebirth, but I was willing to put up with it because I thought the Batcat stuff that they did with him and Selina was really, really interesting and kind of pushed the character into new territory. However, DC Publication, just like their movie divisions, couldn't actually sit down, shut the hell up, and let a writer do something they wanted or commit to an idea. So what did they do? They said, well, this is going too far in the direction of married, established Batman. We need sad Batman. Let's splinter this off into kind of its own alternate reality with Batman and Catwoman, the comic series, and don't drag it into main canon. Let's actually just kind of split those two up a little more again because we need sad Batman. You know, they can't let go of what their status quo is. They always have to return to it when it comes to the comic books. Again, Marvel is definitely, I would say, guilty of the same thing, but I'm just telling you why I feel let down by the comic books as well. Then when we get to gaming, I feel like it was special for a very, very long time. It was very special with the Arkham games and some of the Lego Batman and even Lego DC supervillain stuff they had going on there. It's not that they're bad now, but I do think that the games are not, to me, quite as interesting as they used to be. Things like Gotham Knights, which I like more than a lot of you do, I think are fine. I think it was fun, but I don't think it ever hits those heights of special that the Arkham series hit. And maybe Rocksteady's Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League will. We will have to wait and see. But I'm just saying that there's been a little bit, for me, of a decline when it comes to DC video games. Not many come out, really, even at all right now. And the one that did recently, I like it, but I'm not in love with it. You know what I mean? It's not a life-changing experience for me. So the movies, you know, the DCEU, the animation with the DCAU, AMU, Tomorrowverse, all this stuff, untapped potential, and kind of just letting things drop the ball. The comics, the video games, for me, I've been in a position for a little while where I'm just a little disappointed with DC. Do they still release the occasional banger that I really like? Yeah, they do. I mean, I loved The Suicide Squad. I loved The Batman. Maybe the titles are what's killing it. But I think for me, it's a big letdown when there's this lack of consistency of good. So I know some of you are going to say, some of you who made it this far, are going to say, well, then why does it matter that they're rebooting this? Why does it matter that they're moving Henry Cavill out? To me, personally, it's an issue of respect, because I think James Gunn should know a little better than this how it feels to be put in this position. However, I also understand that they are probably under the thumb of the whole Warner Discovery thing, which seems to want them to just make one universe and neglect the multiverse concept, which I think is a stupid-ass idea, but that seems to be what they want for brand synergy, even though I think WB products, like, well, with DC especially, they've always done the multiverse more interesting to me than Marvel. So I think it's something that it's a missed opportunity if you're letting Marvel cash in on that concept and you refuse to. But regardless, it seems they want this sense of brand synergy, And with actually moving Henry Cavill out, this is something that James Gunn himself experienced through a pretty bad backlash a few years ago. I don't know how many of you will remember this, but essentially he had a bunch of jokes that came up from like a decade ago. Yeah, a lot of them weren't funny and a lot of them were very crass. I think there was jokes about like how a shower head had the water pressure of a toddler peeing on you, stuff like that. I actually think some of it was tame. Some of it was very dark, sort of like jokes making light. I wouldn't even say making light, but making humorous subject matter for comedy out of like pedophilia. I guess that was kind of the argument for a lot of that. And he basically lost his job at Marvel because of that. Now he's back now, and personally, I think they probably were always going to bring him back, but they pretty much caved to the internet and pushed him out during a pretty integral time in his career when he was very excited to finish something that he had started. What does that sound familiar to? Who does that sound like? Who, after waiting a long time and trying really hard to build something in this character, is finally allowed to come back, hell, even basically left The Witcher and was going to be working on Superman, and now he's just kind of getting pushed to the side and pushed out. It sounds to me like Henry Cavill. Now, there's different reasoning for it, and I understand that completely. I'm not going to be super disingenuous with this and say James Gunn thinks Henry Cavill likes kids or something like that, or Henry Cavill was fired because he made jokes. No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, though, the idea of a person who worked very hard to try and create something and cares very much about it, getting sidelined and pushed out of their creation that they're hoping to do, and then just kind of, being left there on the sidelines for a while, that's something that James Gunn had happen to him. That's why it really disappoints me personally to see this happening to Henry Cavill. I think Henry was a good Superman. I think he could have been an even better Superman with better writing that I think could have easily been done. And personally, this has always been my take, always, till the day I die. Why are they so afraid of the idea of having a Superman in this continuity and in this one, or a Batman in this continuity and in this one? I don't think the audience is so damn stupid that they can't figure that out. I really don't. I think movies like Joker and even The Batman show that they can figure that out, show that they can still go see those movies. And I think there are shared universe movies like Thor, Love and Thunder in the MCU, which even though I had a fun time with and enjoyed, didn't do nearly as well as people thought they would, right? Just because you're part of a shared universe doesn't mean your sales will skyrocket. Doesn't mean that people will see that movie. Just because you're not part of a shared universe or in the same canon or continuity, that doesn't mean that people won't see the movie, right? That doesn't mean people will just ignore it. And I think that this is a studio level decision that is just not well thought out. I think it's a bad look. He finally came back with Black Adam and people were excited. The dude waited years for this and now he's just gone again. If you disagree with me on everything I said, that's fine. But think about this. If the plan can be changed this easily, if Affleck can be on his way back in and then probably out again in terms of actually being Batman, right? Because why are they going to want more than one Batman? There have even been reports that they don't want 3 Batmen. They don't want Keaton, Batfleck, and obviously, Pattinson as well. They want a Batman, right? If these reports are true, and if this is kind of what they're doing, trying to go towards a brand synergy approach, who is to say that they won't kick Pattinson out at some point? Who's to say they won't drop the Batman continuity at some point? When every continuity I try to get invested in and try and get my hopes up for, or with the DCEU, with some of its recent movies, they try and get my hopes back up for to actually get into again a lot. If you can change things that quickly, if you can course correct and move characters out, move actors out, change plans, get rid of them, who's to say you can't do that in the future? Who's to say at some point the Arkhamverse isn't seen as irrelevant in gaming? Move on, get past it. It's too old. Been there, done that. It's the DCAU thing, where a lot of us, it's our favorite. Like, I know a lot of you, your on-screen watching favorite continuity for DC is the DCAU, and your favorite on-screen playing and interacting with continuity is the Arkhamverse. Who's to say that the Arkhamverse won't just get the same exact, treatment that the DCAU got? It's old. We don't need it. Start over. Start fresh. Build something up. And that's what's happened with a lot of these universes like the DCAMU, the DCAU. I think it's going to happen with the Tomorrowverse, since they already release a slew of standalone movies that don't even tie into that. And now it's happening with the DCEU. It's happened over and over with comic books. We saw it with the New 52. We saw sort of a reversal with Rebirth and Convergence, but it's still something that really affected a lot of people and annoyed them. And now we're kind of seeing it with the movies. Do I think that a reboot has the potential to be good? Yes. Do I believe that it is part of my, I guess I would say, job on here, or my obligation to try and stay involved and in the know about what's going on with these companies? Yes, I do. I don't think that I am in a position, for me, with what you guys care about and enjoy watching, I don't think I'm in a position where I should just drop them entirely and never check them out and never give them a chance. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying that the stuff that is still here that you like, or the stuff that they are going to build up, who's to say that in 10 years they won't do the same thing to it that they did to the DCEU? Because I don't know about you, but with the DCEU ultimately leading nowhere and sort of just fizzling out randomly, it almost feels like a waste of my and everyone's time, right? This was supposed to be kind of their MCU. This was supposed to go a direction and be interesting. And instead of letting it hit that point and letting it go there and fixing it, we're just going to kind of move on from it. We're kind of going to get rid of it. Now, could be good. It really could. And I hope it is. But for me personally, that frustrates me. And I think for me, and I know for my wife, Jill, if they get rid of Battinson, I think that might just be my last straw, where I just don't give a shit anymore. Because I keep trying to care about DC. I keep trying to get into the video games. I keep trying to get into the comics. I keep trying to get into the animation and the movies. And I find myself more and more gravitating towards older stuff, because at least I know what I'm getting and I can just avoid the bad quality. Whereas with the newer stuff, I get so excited for certain things to go certain directions and to maybe do something with it, right? And it just feels like it fizzles out. It just feels like it doesn't lead anywhere, and I'm just kind of left with no real enjoyment out of the process of hoping for the best. Because I want to hope for the best. I want everything to be the best it can possibly be. And at the end of the day, maybe this universe will be good and I still won't like it, and other people will like it. That's great too. I'm happy to see a smile on people's faces, and I think the DCEU is directionless for a long time. It's kind of like the family pet that has a lot of issues and it kind of just finally hits the end of the road. And unfortunately, like the easiest thing to do is to try and move on. But to me, this would be like making that decision when you were seeing glimmers of hope, where it was like the family pet was back to normal. You know what I mean? And you're like, no, we got to move on anyway. That's a little bit, to me, what it's starting to feel like with this, where it feels like they were trying to sort of fix some of this stuff and go in a little bit of a better direction. Look, is the new management of DC any worse than the old management? I don't personally think so. I think the old management sucked ass. So for all I know, I'll be eating my words in a year, and genuinely, I hope I am. I hope I am, and I hope it's good. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. I'm tired of the inconsistency. I'm tired of the untapped potential being ignored. And I feel like this is just a disrespectful move to Henry Cavill himself as a person and as someone who has tried very hard to work with DC for a long time. But you can let me know what you think. Please be sure to leave a like if you enjoy and subscribe for more content. I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a fantastic day. And as always, everyone, stay shui.